your own business, when you're an entrepreneur, you really need to believe in yourself, and you have to have that confidence to go out there and essentially sell yourself. And dating isn't that much different. You still need to have a confidence and believe in yourself. The trick is that sometimes we can focus on one area of our lives and believe in ourselves, and then in another area we won't.
Welcome to Inspired by Success, the podcast where I deep dive into the mindset of successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, and thought leaders. Get ready to be inspired and gain valuable insights to unlock your true potential.
Transform your financial future with this episode sponsored by KE Financial Services.
Alrighty. Today, our guest is a former single mum working 60 hours a week who faced dating challenges and feelings of hopelessness. She ended up navigating the chaos of dating to discovering the secrets of lasting love and discovered a method to find love, gain confidence, happiness, and renewed energy. Now, she shares her experience and guidance with women over 40, helping them find lasting love. But this episode will also be relevant for men as well, so stay tuned. Now, if you haven't already, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe because that helps the channel grow and we can bring on even more amazing guests. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Krista Melanson.
Hi, Linda. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No worries. Tell us a bit about your story and the lessons you've learned in finding love and navigating life.
Oh, well, sometimes I feel like it's a fairly common one, but everybody's is uniquely, a little bit different. I was a single mom. I had 3 kids. I always like to say 3 kids, not in the really fun age because they were preteen and teenager. So, very opinionated and started to have ideas about things. But I had 3 kids. I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet and pay the mortgage because that's what you have to do. And I was tired and frustrated and lonely. Actually, both my parents had passed away within a year of each other. So I really was sort of feeling like I was alone and adrift. And I always knew that I wanted somebody to share my life with and needed some of that adult time and that adult connection. And so I went on the dating sites and I was really frustrated by them, as so many people are. You hear men and women say that they're frustrating and depressing. And I was going on the dating sites and not having much luck, and I delete them and go back on because I knew I wanted to find somebody. But then, of course, having the kids and working so much doesn't give you much of an opportunity to go and meet people organically. And so I decided that, I had to step up my game somehow, and I had to figure out how I could be more successful because, you write down on paper, okay, here are my pluses and here are my minuses. And well, it seems like I've got more pluses than minuses. And so I started doing some research, and I did a lot of inner work on myself and feeling better about myself and reframing my positivity, my energy, my mindset. And I stepped up and I met somebody, and it's been, a whirlwind fairy tale romance since then. We've been together 6 years. We've traveled all over the place. We bought an apartment in Italy together. We bought a cottage. Our lives, I feel kind of silly saying it, but I really do feel like my life is a fairy tale every day.
Wow, what a blessing. So what hurdles do people face when dating later in life, and how can they overcome it? So because I know that I hear on other podcasts as well how the career woman, for example, over 40, they find it hard to find love because, they're focusing on their careers, just like what you did too. But it gets harder because as you get older, the men that are available are no longer available. They're actually married or, so that, what hurdles have you seen dating with the clients that you've had?
Well, there's so many different hurdles that people come up against when they're over 40. And the internal battle is really a big one, right? Because you start to think, I'm over 40, there's not much time left. I'm not as young as I was. My skin's not as firm. Maybe I put on a couple pounds or whatever. Especially for women start to really second guess themselves and think that men only want a younger woman, which is really categorically not true. Older men really love a woman who knows what she wants, right? So that makes you very sexy in a different way. So that's a big one. Another one is that for women over 40, we're still of that genre where online dating may be a bit of a stigma still. So they don't feel as though they can talk to friends and family and share what they're going through if they're doing the online dating experience. And they also might have a situation where a lot of their friends and family are married with families, which means that they're, in the first place, they're just not as available. But second of all, they don't relate to the whole dating thing. So it can be really an isolating experience dating over 40.
Wow, yeah, that's true. So, how can people effectively use these dating apps to find these meaningful connections that they're after?
Well, the really important thing about dating apps that I encourage people to understand is that dating apps are a means of connection. They're not the place where you do the dating. So, the example I use is if you're in the grocery store and you bump into somebody in the fruit section looking at apples, and seems like a good looking guy or girl, and they're maybe eligible, and you strike up a conversation, but that's all it is a very short 5 minute 10-minute conversation, and you exchange phone numbers, and maybe you go out on a date at a later time. And that's what dating apps should be. You should not be getting to know people in the apps. You should be making that connection. And then I always recommend that within a week or 2 weeks maximum, you're moving that from the dating app to real life. And you start with a coffee date and say, we'll get together for a half an hour in a public place so it's safe. And when you meet for that coffee date, that's when you decide if that person is right, if there's any chemistry to have a true first date.
Talking about safety, though, are there any strategies to avoid scammers or pitfalls when using dating apps?
The biggest strategy for avoiding the scammers and the fake profiles is to move it to an in-person situation as quickly as
Mm.
possible. Because if you're talking to someone, and a lot of people, men and women, fall into this sort of, I don't know what, a pitfall of talking to somebody for a long time and starting to make that emotional connection before you've even met them. And at that point, you have no idea who this person is. And so if you meet them in a relatively short period of time, then you can immediately see, okay, he or she is who they said they were. You can judge by the accuracy of the photos and things like that. And I always advocate just doing a little bit of research and finding, most people are on social media, finding a little bit of information. And I don't consider that stalking. I consider that doing due diligence.
Protecting yourself as well. Have you heard of any tragic stories about? Because I hear it on the radio about all these scammers and stuff through dating apps and taking advantage of vulnerable women or even men as well, getting taken advantage of as well. So, have you heard any interesting stories about that?
Oh, I heard one recently. I read it, and it happened to a Canadian lady. She was online dating and she met somebody, and they fell in love, and they wanted to be married, and they had this long relationship, and she ended up one way or another sending him $200,000.
It's so
And
common. I hear it a lot. And was
right,
he from Nigeria? Yeah, was he from like
and then,
overseas, a long distance?
yeah, and he didn't exist. But then the worst part for me was that it happened to her again. She met somebody, and he sent her an airline ticket to meet him in the Middle East somewhere, and she ended up in a hotel for 2 weeks waiting for him. And then his friend dropped off some clothes and a suitcase, and she was supposed to go and meet him in Hong Kong, and it turned out that the clothes were all lined with drugs, and she's now in jail in Hong Kong because she smuggled these drugs for him.
Oh, wow! I didn't expect that. Jeez.
Right?
Wow.
So,
So she lost. She seemed to have. This is the same woman you're saying.
same woman.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
So
poor thing.
you
Like,
just you
gosh.
just have to be aware and use common sense. If something doesn't sound right, and the big thing is when you're meeting somebody online, you don't owe them anything. They're a face and a name on a screen. If something doesn't seem right, it doesn't feel right, just say, "It was nice meeting you. I don't think we're a match," and then block them. And then they don't have access to you anymore, and move on to the next match.
Exactly. And you mentioned like um, with the profile and stalking is can you share any tips on creating a compelling profile, whether that be in dating or even in the business world too? How can we make ourselves like more compelling for others, whether that be for a
Definitely.
professional or yeah.
Definitely. The if you think of your profile as your sales page, right? Your landing page, it's the first thing that people see about you. And when you've got a profile, the first thing that people are going to look at are the pictures, and that's just the way it always is. And everybody loves a different type of person and they have different preferences. So you have to allow people to make choices based on their preferences. That's just the way it works in the world. So I always recommend having one full body picture. And a lot of people don't think that's a good idea, but I think it just is because, different people, some men might like curves, other men might like a lean kind of runner's body, right? There's nothing wrong with either one, but somebody has a preference. And if you have a picture up there that's not a fair representation of you, then the person, although you may have a connection, their initial thought is going to be disappointment, and you don't want to start anything with disappointment, right? So always have your pictures within 6 months or a year maximum so that they are current pictures. Try not to put any pictures, group pictures of you and your best friends, because then you run the risk that they look at the picture and go, oh, she's beautiful, but that's not you.
I've heard
Right?
that.
So, and then try to keep the pictures relevant to who you are. So if you've been on a hike once in your life, but you like to go to the bars and have fun and stay out late, don't put that picture of you hiking, because then you're going to attract people who have those similar interests. And I know that a lot of women do it because they're thinking, well, the more um, interests I have, the more different matches I will attract. But really, you don't want tons of irrelevant ones. You want a smaller number. And the third thing I would say for pictures is don't use professional headshots because they're too sterile. You want a little glimpse into your personality. And and if possible, have something that's kind of interesting that is an automatic conversation starter, because that's a great way to get people talking, right? So you have a picture of yourself hanging off the Eiffel Tower with the newspaper in your hand, then somebody can message you and say, hey, what's up with the newspaper? It kind of sparks interest and gets conversation going.
Beautiful, great advice. Okay, so let's talk about your insights from your dating journey. Like, how did you, wait, sorry, what insights from your dating journey can be applied to overcome challenges, especially in business as well? Do you see any connections between building confidence in dating and building confidence as an entrepreneur as well?
Absolutely. When you have your own business, when you're an entrepreneur, you really need to believe in yourself, and you have to have that confidence to go out there and essentially sell yourself. And dating isn't that much different. You still need to have a confidence and believe in yourself. The trick is that sometimes we can focus on one area of our lives and believe in ourselves, and then in another area we won't. So you might believe in yourself as being a fantastic business person, having this terrific business acumen, but then you feel like you're not as pretty as somebody else, or you have a little weight, or you're too tall or too short or whatever. And it's as important or more important to believe in yourself when you're dating, because you attract what you put out. So if you're going out into the dating world thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to find somebody, then that's probably the type of person you're going to attract. And if you think about it, that's not the person that you probably want to attract. And I understand it's not like flipping a switch. You can't all of a sudden say, okay, today I'm confident. But there's ways to work on confidence and reassuring yourself so that you can put that more positive, more confident, more attractive person out there.
You would have had to go through a lot of rejections and whatnot when you were doing on the journey, because there's a lot of rejection, like there's a lot of you rejecting others and facing rejections as well when you're doing the dating scene. But what advice can you offer entrepreneurs facing these similar setbacks and rejections as well?
Well, the important thing when with dating to remember is that rejection, they're not rejecting you. So if somebody ghosts you or says, I don't want to see you anymore, they're not rejecting you because of who you are or anything like that. It's because of them and their choices. Quite often, if somebody ghosts you, and that feels so much like rejection, when somebody ghosts you, it's because either they are, let's face it, a little too immature to be honest and say, I don't think we're a match. Oftentimes they're married, or otherwise involved with somebody else, or they're not who they say they are. They just want to get online and have a little chat for entertainment, I guess. And when you are talking to somebody, and again, if you don't let it go too long, it doesn't sting quite as much. If you're moving to meeting somebody in person, then it doesn't sting as much. But if somebody ghosts you, then you need to remember that that person is not the right person for you. And so it's not a bad thing. It's just you've eliminated one person. So you're one step closer to the right person who's going to come along.
Yeah, I agree. I heard that like rejection is just another door opening for something better. So,
Exactly.
rejection, yeah, can always be a good thing in disguise sometimes. So, how do you should entrepreneurs seek a perfect partner in business collaboration, or is flexibility more crucial? So, what are your thoughts on that? Because, we're all looking for the perfect partner in relationships, but when it comes to business, what are your thoughts on that when we're trying to find the perfect partner in business?
In business?
So should entrepreneurs seek a perfect partner in business collaborations, or is it just like in any relationship? What are your thoughts on that? Is there flexibility? Is that crucial?
Well, the thing about a perfect partnership is that when you say perfect partner, when anybody says perfect partner, the way to look at it is that you want the perfect partner for you. Nobody's perfect. We all have our flaws, and different people are going to mesh in different ways. The same in business or relationships, right? So you want somebody who shares your values and ideals is so important. That's something that you need to be simpatico on, whether it's business or relationship. You have to have the same sort of values and ideals, and you have to complement each other and be willing to compromise as well. And compromise is a big one in any type of relationship, because everybody's going to have different opinions. We're humans, we're all individual people. And when you put two people together, there are going to be not arguments, but differences of opinion. And that's where you need to be able to compromise. So your perfect partner will be different. My perfect partner would be different from your perfect partner. It just has to be the person who meshes with you. And you don't always know it. You can't go out and have in your head, this is the type of person I want, whether it's for business or relationships. You can have sort of a rough idea, but the more specific you are about what you want, the more difficult it will be to find someone, because you really don't know what that perfect partner will be like until you meet them and you get to know them and share some thoughts.
Did you find it like it was like a numbers game? Because I've heard one of my favorite podcasts or my favorite celebrities, like I guess Layla Hormozi, she talks about how she found Alex Hormozi. It was just a numbers game, and she had her select criteria, and it was just purely numbers game. So she had multiple different dates, like a lot, until she found the right person. What was your experience with that?
Well, for sure. And I have said similar before. I say it's a process of elimination, right? And it depends on where you are and how big of an area you're in. If you're in a huge city, like if you're in New York City, you may have 1,000 or more matches or 10,000 matches when you go on to a dating site. So that is in situations like that. And I always recommend keeping your area very small to begin with if you're in a big area, right? So everyone within a mile, it all reduces the numbers, and then just expand it a little at a time. But it's definitely getting through. I don't think you should ever be speaking to just one person at a time, because it is a process. And if you have only one person you're speaking to at a time, then it takes you longer to work through the numbers, right? But there's no harm. Like I said earlier, this is a person that's a face on a screen and a name. You don't owe them anything. So you can be having conversations with three or four people, or however many your brain can handle, right? You can be having conversations with a few people and go out for coffee with them, but it's up to you to decide when the relationship is going from just a coffee date to something a little more significant, and then you narrow it down to having just one person that you're talking to.
Yeah, that's elimination, process of elimination. Now, let's talk about the role of self-care. When you mentioned it when you were working 60 hours a week, how important is maintaining your self-care, but also looking to sustain a thriving relationship? So how can people prioritize self-care in their busy lives, but also maintain a great relationship too?
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you think about your day, anybody thinks about their day, there's always time that you spend sort of not, whether you're flicking through the TV channels or you're reading for 2 hours before bed or whatever. There's always a little bit of give and take with your time, and you really need to prioritize what it is that you want to do. So having self-care and making sure you feel good and you feel at ease with yourself is so important. So you make time for that. And it's like anything else. It's, if you make it a priority, you will find the time to do that. And I hear so many people say, well, I don't have time to date. It's like, but you have
Mm.
time to scroll through Facebook for an hour or whatever, right? So sometimes it's almost like efficiency and maximizing your time. But making a priority for self care is part of that self love element that we talked about earlier, because when you take care of yourself, when you fill your cup first, then you're better able to give to other people and be a better partner, business partner, mother, employee, whatever it is that they're doing.
Can you share any tips that you used as well with, your when you were going through your journey? How you said that you to improve yourself as well and to better yourself in order to find the right partner. Can you share any tips and advice on that?
Well,
What did you
sure.
what did
I
you have to work on as well? Because you sometimes people have past traumas or they've got baggage from their other relationships and whatnot too. So for me personally, I think if you're going to go into a new relationship, I've seen it before that you don't bring your baggage with you and your belief systems and whatnot. But sometimes it's hard. How does somebody work on that before they move on to another relationship?
It's very hard to start a new relationship when you're bringing baggage from another relationship. And you should never judge a future relationship based on past, failures or mistakes or whatever you'd like to call them. But it's difficult. For me, I had my ex-husband was a bit of a bully, and not physically, emotionally. And I had no confidence when he and I split up. And I still struggle with it a bit, for sure. But
Mm.
it all came, it was one of those things that I researched and found out that I had to start working on myself, and I had to understand and accept and acknowledge my traits, my benefits that I had, my qualities, sorry, is the word I was looking for. And I had to be able to acknowledge those, um, without reservation, so that I could understand what it was that I was bringing to the table in a relationship. And I wrote lists and I journaled a lot. The other thing that is important, that can be really helpful, is to forgive people. And remember that when you're forgiving somebody for past trauma, you're forgiving them for you, not for them. And
Mm.
so that can make a big difference too. That a lot of people, when they hear that, the penny just drops, and it makes perfect sense, right? You're forgiving somebody for your peace of mind, for your calm, and not for them. And it that can help people get past the trauma as well. And just allowing yourself to think about it, to embrace it, not be afraid of your feelings and run away from them, right? If you have a little bit of fear around dating or around another relationship, it's okay to feel that fear. Just don't let it take you over. But acknowledge it and say, okay, I understand that I have fear because of my past relationship, but I'm doing something new with a different person. So I'm not going to bring that fear with me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And whatever you think about your that person or your ex, wish them well. Try to. It might be hard as well, but once you wish them well and wish them the best and wish them love and happiness, whatever, the blessings come back to you as well, and it helps you. So it's just the same as what you mentioned about forgiveness. So I totally agree. Like it's like do unto others what you want unto you, but just bless them with the
Exactly.
universe. And I told my friend that too. I said, because sometimes relationships end in a really bad way, and there's usually the case that you have a lot of anger and hatred for them and revenge and whatnot. But then if you try to flip it around and then just try it, change your perception and just wish them well, encourage them, and wish them happiness and whatnot. It will come back to you as well. So I thought that was pretty powerful, and it takes practice, but it does work. And I've
Definitely.
seen the results too. I've actually seen it when she's flipped her mindset, and now they get along, even though they're exes and they've broken up. They get along really well. So, what do you think about what? How do you see the future of dating evolving? And are there any insights that we can gain from? How do you see the future of dating evolving? Especially now that
Um,
there's just so many different dating apps, and we're getting AI into the fold. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Does that make us less connected? Do you reckon?
I'll be honest with you. I have a 21-year-old daughter. So I talked to her about her dating woes. And in some ways it's the same, but in some ways it's completely different. And I think for the people over 40 out there who are dating, I don't think it's going to change much, because I think we were brought up a certain way in a certain generation, and we like that physical contact, or that personal in-person contact. But I think for the younger people, it's just going to get more and more and more online. And I
Mm,
think that young people are, I don't want to say losing the ability to communicate with each other, but they really don't do it as much as we do. I mean, they're on their phones, and
mm,
my kids text each other within the house, and that sounds like a
mm.
joke, but it's really
But
true,
yeah.
right? And I think that generation is that just there's going to be more of a separation. There's not as much face to face contact.
Yeah, that's it's sad, but they're so used to their screens. I think the kids are going to have an interesting future when it comes to dating. And I think, geez, everything is accessible and easy for them and fast as well. So there's no slow like relationship building, and it's yeah, it's just an interesting future that I see for the kids growing up in, especially in the world of dating.
Yeah, I think it will be with the younger people. It may become more of a transaction, or more of
Mm,
um, a business partnership rather than a relationship. The way we traditionally think of it, they will be like, okay, you have this, 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 and this, and I have this, 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 and this, and they go together. Okay, so we're a match. Then I guess we can be together, rather than letting their feelings take over. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe feelings will always trump everything else. You'd have to hope, but I think they will be going about it in a different way, in a more sterile way.
yeah, hopefully we get some more awareness in the world and common sense as well. Do you have any mentors that you have helped you with your journey, and books or podcasts that you recommend?
Not anything specific. I've done, I read so many books, and I've researched things. I've worked with business coaches that have been really helpful in a lot of different ways. But I just find that if you go with, I mean, I want to say good old common sense, but there's a little bit more to that for sure. But
Which
no,
books,
there's a really good
when
book
you were
that I
doing your
read.
research? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the books
I
like when you were researching, what was there any that particularly really stood out for you?
There was one book that was really good that talked about attachment theories, and it was called Attached. And I found that was really great, because it dove deep into the three different attachment types, which is avoidant, anxious, and secure, and talking about
Mm,
how people will get together with the different attachments. And I found that was really helpful, because you do get an insight into the behavior behind certain people, and especially a lot of men on these dating sites are the avoidant type. And
mm.
it helps sort of make that buffer, so that you stop thinking that it's all about you, and you start understanding that it's, about the other person and their personality type. So Attached is a really great book to read.
I heard it on a podcast as well. An author, a book, not that book, but she was talking about the different types of attachment as well, and why some people are more clingy in a way, and some people like feel abandoned. So I guess that makes a great understanding as to why, and creates more self awareness, I suppose, and
It
why
is
people get let down.
definitely.
Yeah,
But
because
there
like
is,
especially
sorry,
with
go ahead.
apps, and sorry, especially with relationships, when they're dating, and then you wonder why the person, like the other, just say the other person's not responding as much, and or the other, or the one, say for example the female is more clingy, because of these issues, underlying issues beforehand, and then it's, yeah, just like what you said as well.
Yeah, there's not much you can do with attachment styles. There's all attachment styles can have successful relationships with a different attachment style, but it's good to know sometimes in advance what it is that you're sort of facing when you're
Mm,
meeting somebody who has a different attachment style. Because if you can understand where they are coming from, why they're saying certain things or doing certain things, it makes much more sense, and it actually brings a lot of calm, because you can say, okay, I understand why they're doing this, and so I won't react the way I was originally going to react. So
yes,
it's good to know a little bit about that type of thing as well.
definitely, it avoids a lot of disappointment. And I think
Definitely.
not having expectations as well helps us improve that as well. Do you
Expectations are huge.
Yeah. Oh, well, can you elaborate on any expectations and what your advice on that would be?
Yeah. Well, zero expectations. Go in, don't have any expectations going into the first date for sure. You don't want to go into a first date thinking, okay, this could be the one. You want to go into a first date thinking, I'm making a connection with another human being, and that's enough for me today. And if it turns into something else and you have a good date and they seem like a nice person and you have a second date, that's great too. But don't start forming any attachments until probably a month, because you really don't start to get to know somebody before that. And if you are the type of person who, meets somebody and falls in love on the first date, I highly recommend just forcing yourself to step back a little bit and just be a little detached so that that doesn't happen, because you really can't know somebody right away.
Yep. Do you find, I don't know, in your line of work, have you found a lot of people have had much success with dating apps and then getting, building long term relationships and then getting married from them? Have you seen
I
that?
have I know a lot of people who met on dating apps. I met my partner on Tinder, and
Oh, wow.
my daughter's actually set me up on Tinder, and I said, I can't go on Tinder.
I've heard
And they
some
said, no,
stories
mom, it's
about
fine.
Tinder. I've
The,
heard some really bad stories on Tinder.
the thing about Tinder is that it's just easy, right? And easy can be good and easy can be bad, because people can just mindlessly swipe and not pay attention. So, but all apps have their pluses and minuses, right? Just like human beings. And there are so many people. I think 50% of relationships start on dating apps these days, and 26% of marriages started on a
Wow.
dating app.
Wow. Are there any dating apps that you recommend? Like I've heard I don't go on at dating apps, Bumble, Tinder. Are there any that, you recommend for people?
Well, Bumble's really good if the woman feels like she wants to decide who she talks to, because the woman has to make the comment first. A lot of women over 40, if they're sort of more traditional, will say, I don't feel comfortable making the first move. So that doesn't suit everybody. Meets Bagel is a really good one, because that gives you proximity. It tells you who at that moment is in close proximity to you, can be great, because if you find somebody, you message them, and they're 3 blocks away, and you message them and say, do you want to have coffee? You've jumped right in there, right? And
Mhm.
that would be a great, in my opinion, a great way to do it. A lot of people do enjoy the coffee meets bagel. I've also heard, I'm sorry, I meant to turn that off. My daughter is hopefully going to be competing in the Olympics next year, and the tickets go on sale at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. So I want to get everything set up so I can go and buy
Oh,
the
wow.
tickets. So I'm sorry about that.
No worries. It's okay.
So um,
We're talking about,
Bumble is a good one because the women can converse first. Some people say that OK Cupid has hotter guys, but I don't believe that. I think that with the dating apps, you're going to find that you see a lot of the same people on the apps. So I don't think one
mm,
is necessarily better than the other. It's more what you're comfortable using. I know a lot of younger people prefer Hinge. My daughter meets all her dates on Hinge. Um, and it's different ones have different qualities. So it's really is what you're comfortable using.
what are your thoughts on people that are older and then they still can't find any love or a great relationship on apps? Where else can, do you think going back to old school and going into the bars or what? Like, what advice for those that aren't having much luck or success on these apps?
Well, people ask me that all the time, and that's a really tough question to answer, because the whole thing about meeting somebody organically is a chance meeting, and it could happen at the park or at the grocery
Mm,
store. But if you want to move things along, um, it's always a great idea to look for groups in your city that have some that are interest based, right? So if you're into photography,
mm.
find a photography group, or if you're into hiking, find a hiking group. Is a great way to do it.
Yeah,
Any
Facebook
sort
groups, I
of,
guess. Yeah.
pardon me?
Like Facebook groups and activities and events there. That'd be a good step, maybe.
Absolutely. I know a few people who've met people out of on Facebook groups and just gotten together. So find something that talks about your interests. Facebook has so many groups. So find something that follows your interest, and then you'll be able to get in there and chat with people, and you never know what you're going to find out. Also, of course, church groups and things like that. Um, there's a lot of singles nights that go on in cities for different reasons. One of my clients she's 6'2", and she always worries she's never going to find somebody who's her height or taller. And there is actually a singles group for tall people in the
Oh,
city that
wow.
she lives in. So there's if you go online and do the research without having to be on the apps, there's so many different interest groups around, and the bigger the city, the more options there are to meet people. So just look for similar interests is a great way to do it, because then you're going to meet somebody that you can share that passion with.
That's great advice. Finally, what advice would you like to share based on your transformative journey in love and life for our audience?
The most important thing I always say is just don't give up. There's definitely somebody out there, and it always makes me so sad to hear people say I'm going to stay single for the rest of my life because it's not worth it, but it really is worth it. When you find that person to share your life with, to go on adventures and travel or whatever it is that you want to do, it is so worth it. So don't ever give up. Put yourself out there a little bit, get out of your comfort zone, and you will absolutely find somebody.
Great advice. Well, that was a very interesting, a great conversation. And I wanted to where can people find you if they wanted to reach out to you for your advice and your tips as well?
Best place I tell people to look for me is just on my Facebook profile, which is just my name, Krista Melanson, Melanson. And, you know, I encourage people to go to my Facebook profile, because then you're really going to see a little bit about me before we ever have a conversation. So, you can see pictures of my family and my travels and all that type of thing. And it's a way for people to get to know me a little bit. And I'm very open about that because I have a somewhat public business, right? So I encourage people to do that and get to know me there. And then, if it seems like I would be someone you'd like to talk to, then by all means send me a message and I'm happy to chat.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Krista, and all the best with your relationships and your life in general.
Thank you very much, Linda. You as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.